Hello, welcome to From Caracas. I'm Laura Prada, and this we continue here at the Sao Paulo Forum, the 25th edition of the Sao Paulo Forum. And now we have a special guest. We are talking with Rosa Miriam Elizalde. She is from Cuba. She is a journalist. She is a member of the Journalism Union in Cuba, and she will share with us some ideas of how communication is such an important tool for the left movement in the world. How the left is trying to take aside those paradigms and those ideas that they're not united, that they're not working in the same way to tear apart those ideas that the great mass media have put in the world, that different view of the left that we are seeing, and how they are using the communication to expand their horizons.
Unfortunately, the left takes a few steps behind the right. Let us remember that there has been a dramatic change in the communication in the world, a paradigm shift of the communication paradigm that goes with these new tools, especially the internet. That is not an instrument. It is an ecosystem created by the left, where today practically it is controlled by very few companies that have established almost totalitarian power on the internet. And if you add up that in communication, the left has always had big problems. I always remember Eduardo Valiano, who joked with the pathetic incapacity that sometimes the left has. Having the values, being on the right side of the study, but in the face of communication processes that had always gone a little behind. And today, the big challenge first is transcending, and it is a debate that we have had here in the Forum of Sao Paulo. Transcend the dichotomy that one thing is the street and another thing is a network. First the street, other the networks, or first the networks and then the street. It is to understand ourselves as amphibians beings, that is, people are on the streets and the networks at the same time. One thing cannot be differentiated from the other. And today, being on the networks and being in the thought of ideas of the left in the networks, it is a challenge that it not only takes the presence of political militancy, but it also takes knowledge. Because we are talking about new technologies, we are talking about great transnationals, and we are also talking about transnational powers that use science for manipulation to point their objectives on us. And that, as we are seeing, for example, in Latin America, and even get to model political scenarios, you can explain, for example, Bolsonaro without a networking strategy in which they have manipulated people from the use of these platforms.
How the left can use that platforms, the facilities it brings, and to change, to adapt, to send the messages in a different way, and that people don't think, well, they're still in the same, they're not using it the right way, they are not adapting, they are not profiting with them, they're not sending the right message.
Look, the Forum of Sao Paulo has a magnificent opportunity. Most parties and left-wing movements are concentrated here. However, for example, a study made by the University of Computer Science, UCI, or Havana University, a graphic study showed by them how internet accounts are articulated, particularly Twitter accounts of political parties and left-wing leaders. And it proved in a simple graphic that everyone is in their own bubble. They don't even interact with each other. So we have to go from the simplest to be able to revolt and to be able to generate a strategy and theory for the participation of the left in social networks, which is simply that you create the structures that allow us to see each other, that allow us to exchange and to efficiently share our ideas and share the struggles as well. There is a concept that I think that you have to be very clear about, that you can have the best local communication project, and yet you're a hostage to the big campaigns that usually make you lapse that are from the outside, from the exterior. Like so, for example, in Cuba, at the campaign of the sonic attacks, there's not a single Cuban who believes that no diplomat could have been attacked in the Havana embassy. However, on the international right particularly, used with laboratories, have imposed the matrix that at least something happened there. And it's because the networking and communication efforts must have different scales. It must have local scales that are very important, but not so strong as they don't exist yet. If there are no regional and global joints, and that has to be built. We must start from the cathedral that needs, the cathedral of knowledge, to appropriate the logics of these spaces and to generate the theories, to generate our tools. Remember that we're using other people's tools. It has to begin from the minimum, which is that people are exchanged, interacted with, and coexist together in the networks and make synergy together. That allow us to defend our efforts in a coordinated way, and for that, we need people working 24 hours a day. We need to generate alliance not only among communicators. Today, communicators and journalists stop being something of only one person. We need interaction of various disciplines, generating also, of course, thoughts and spaces to discuss the theories that will allow us to defend ourselves and to generate our own formulas.
You were talking about the sonic attacks in Cuba, and I recall what happened with the so-called humanitarian aid for Venezuela and the frontier with Colombia and the burn down of the trucks. And also afterwards with the blackouts that took place in Venezuela, how it moved on the social media, specifically on Twitter, and how people tried to dismount these fake news that were coming out. And now I ask you, related to the Sao Paulo Forum, because there are so many social movement, political parties that are meeting in this Sao Paulo Forum, and they are the Sao Paulo Forum gives them a space to share those ideas, the different views they have, in order to make a better approach to the ways in which they can use those platforms, and in which they can settle ways to fight that mediatic war that is being put in front of the left.
Look, Venezuela is a very important case in the case of articulation of the networks. It started with Chavez Candanga, and what that process did was to take over and to generate a translation of the basic militancy and take it to the networks as well, without those false dichotomies that are sometimes imposed. It is clear that this exemplary participation of the networks has been one of the fundamental elements of Venezuela's defense. However, if you compare the guarimbas of 2014 to the guarimbas of 2017 with what happened now, it is a qualitative leap. The sweeps were working. The echo chambers of the right. When you see the New York Times twists its hands, it is forced to recognize that the burn trucks, that they were on the border of Colombia, had been one of the great fake news of these years. It was unthinkable for us to be seeing that 2 years ago. That evidently happened because they generated a sentence regional regions that broke the echo chambers of those bubbles where we lock ourselves up, our country or a group, and is impervious to anything that comes from the outside. So, we are always locked in that bubble. It is clear that with international alliance, with interconnection between Telesur, Russia Today, and other spaces of political international communication, can break that chamber, which are very important to break them, because on behalf of them they are imposing sanctions on our countries. So, there's an example of the things that can be done. Now, in the Forum of Sao Paulo, what we have been saying is that we're fed up with diagnoses. There are too many. We know the problems. We know how concentrations are generated. We need exactly practical actions. That is the starting point to then generate other alliance, knowledge, our own tools. But we have to do things. We have to make visible that these relationships is not only by word in these meetings, but that there's also that form of struggles, of the accompaniment of the struggles of our countries, and also in the position of our agendas. Other problems that we have had in this agenda in the left, it is to follow the agenda imposed on us by others. We have to start generating our own agendas, our own actions, and the international regional alliance is truly essential. And then go to other projects that are in custody at some point. For example, the UNASUR said to create a cable fiber to Latin America. 95% of the data transmissions of this continent pass through the USA. What sovereignty are we talking about there? In other words, all these elements must be taken into account. And it is not that we postpone them. We have to carry them in simultaneously. But if the not start for the scenes don't, that is a fundamental element that is solidarity, integration, to create schools. Therefore, they are already entering the scope, the realm of perceptions. That is a complex construction that you have to note, that you have to master.
Is the left conscious of that effort they have to make to cause a real impact?
I believe that the left in the popular here has the best talent. In all areas that can be an important answers, but we must generate a culture in decision makers, in politicians, in our daily work that understands the importance of this. But it's going to be very difficult. We will continue to be in the corrillos or in events like this that we meet. We always say the same things and we do not transcend for the things that we said. That is why we need to go to the practical way of politics. And that's why from there we can generate the strategies to develop the cultures, to develop the synergy that we need to defend ourselves. We have to understand that communication today is a strategic division of politics, and it is a matter of national security for any country, survival of any political movement. For example, the left that we are in minority and that we're also hostage of these greatest nationals who are watching us, who impose their views on us, that idiotize millions of citizens, who divide us, who puts us in bubbles, with must transcends from that. But there is a need and an effort from important political concentrations and also for knowledge and preparation to understand ourselves with this world and to build an alternative way that the world is building for us.
We've seen in the latest years, in the recent years, how those bubbles have caused some effect in Latin America. We've seen how some progressive movements have been stopped on their way towards developing their agendas, their political agendas in the region. And we are also in an electoral year in Latin America, specifically Argentina and Bolivia, and we see how everything is working on. They're projecting their strategies on the social media also. How do they use and are capable of visualizing their proposals, their agenda, to reinstate the power of the progressive movements in the region and the left parties also, that they still have so much work to do. It's a possibility for the left, for the progressive movements to be empowered and to make heard the voices of the peoples of Latin America.
The electoral moments in terms of communication are very dangerous because in recent times, especially from the Brexit, what we have seen in these moments, there are moments of greatest political innovation. And generally, we have not been benefited in these processes because that's where the whole right is mobilizing. Notice that the political marketings left are intervening in Latin America from Cambridge Analytica to there, because Cambridge Analytica, there is information that it was involved in the election, for example, in Argentina. They are very negative. They are putting all the money, the resources, the intelligence and technology to generate and to moderate the political spaces in favor of the global right. However, we are also living in a disenchanted of power positions. Presidents and political parties learned that there is a dispute, for example, what we are seeing in Argentina in terms of the entire Fernandez electoral company. There we seen that they have been maneuvering with the surprise factors and have given it, they have faced in good lead to create nations of the right. And the same is happening in Bolivia, in other processes of the world as well. What we are seeing is that our political processes, our colleagues, are learning and preparing to take the battle in this scenario. But we certainly need more. We need to generate the perception of strength. We need to generate alliance in this area of communication, which I was saying is fundamental today. We have never seen create a false president like Guaidó in almost 2 months, or a character arrive at the president as Brazil. Bolsonaro is a mediocre man, absolutely unknown, and today that is happening. The processes are very fast. They're supported by very large flows of money. Looking at Donald Trump's 2016 campaign, in just 2 weeks of a single campaign attack to Hillary Clinton's bases, $156 million were invested in that. It was known as the Alamo Project. We're talking about that. A lot of money, a lot of technology, a lot of science, but in the face of the evil, based on generating and bringing power to people who were unpresentable at other times. After the Second World War, if someone said or expressed themselves as Bolsonaro does, was unthinkable. We now have seen in Europe where far-right parties are claiming hateful figures that are coming to power. That was unthinkable before the social media, and this is an historic moment of our lives. So, there is a very complex situation, but we have to face this reality with science and ethics. And also from the alliance that must be generated. We must generate the perception of reality, that we are more, that we are united, that we participate together in the struggles, that more things unite us than those that separate us. And from that way, you learn, and you're learning a thing today, and it just stays sitting. The right also learns, which you have to make a learning efforts, and then socialize those experiences and those learnings. To create the spaces to socialize those experiences, and so we can bring together researchers from all the fields that we need to create our tools and our defense in every space as well. Today the tanks, they notice, tanks, say the French, the tanks of 1961 in Cuba, next to Beach Hiron, is today the communication, or the tools that we can appropriate to defend ourselves in these battles that is very asymmetrical and very unfair, for which we not have been prepared, but we are learning every day.
Muchas gracias. Thank you, Miriam.
Gracias a ti.
Like this, we come to the end of this from Caracas, where we spoke with Rosa Miriam Elizalde, who shared with us the ideas and the principles that the left movements in the world have to be conscious today, which are science and technology, working for the communication, but also all this, do it with ethics. Thank you for sharing your time with us. Until next time.